In the heart of Houston, rain lashed against the asphalt, a relentless curtain of water and darkness. For Officer Edward Martinez, it was just another night on the job. Another storm to navigate. He gripped the steering wheel, the leather slick beneath his palms, as the radio crackled with a report. A barefoot man, walking along the I-45 freeway. In the dead of night! In this downpour! Edward's mind immediately went to the usual suspects: a drunk, a runaway, someone lost in their own despair. But as his cruiser slowed, the beam of his headlights cutting through the storm, he saw something that didn't fit. The man wasn't stumbling. He walked with a steady, unhurried pace, a strange calm surrounding him, as if the tempest itself was bending to his will. The water streamed off him, but he seemed untouched by its fury. Edward rolled down his window, the roar of the rain and the highway filling the car. "Sir, you need to get off the road now," he shouted, his voice firm, practiced. The figure turned, and in that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The man's eyes, dark and deep, met his. There was no fear in them, no confusion, only a profound sense of certainty. Before Edward could even state his own name, the stranger spoke his. Edward! The name hung in the air, a quiet statement of fact. A chill, colder than the rain, shot through Martinez. His badge was hidden beneath his raincoat. His nameplate was obscured. There was no way this man could know who he was. "ID! Papers!" Edward demanded, his voice tight, trying to regain control of a situation that was rapidly slipping from his grasp. The man didn't reach for a wallet. He simply lifted his wrists into the light. Healed scars circled them, perfect, unbroken rings. They weren't fresh, but they were undeniable. The image seared itself into Edward's mind. Pushing down the unease, twisting in his gut, he got out of the car, the cuffs cold and heavy in his hand. "You're coming with me," he said, the words feeling hollow even to his own ears. Back at the precinct, the sterile buzz of the fluorescent lights did nothing to warm the interrogation room. The stranger sat across the metal table, his hands cuffed in front of him, his posture relaxed, his gaze unwavering. He seemed more at peace here, under the harsh lights and watchful eyes, than Edward felt in his own skin. "What's your name?" Edward asked, his pen poised over a blank form. The man tilted his head slightly, a gesture of gentle inquiry. "What does your heart tell you?" "My name is," he responded, his voice soft but resonant. Frustration flared in Edward's chest. He slammed the file shut on the table, the sound echoing in the small room. "I'm not playing games with you!" "Then let's not," the stranger said, leaning forward just enough to close the distance between them. The intensity in his eyes was not threatening, but it was absolute. "Tell me about Robert Sanchez." The name hit Edward like a physical blow. His partner, his best friend, dead 3 years. A wound he kept hidden, festering in the dark. No one at this precinct knew the full story, the depth of his guilt. No one but Edward and the nightmares that haunted him every single night. The stranger continued, his voice a low, steady murmur, recounting the details of the accident with chilling precision. He spoke of the guilt Edward carried, the exact time he woke up, gasping for air each night, 3:17 a.m., and even the small detail of the woman he had saved that same night, an act of heroism that had always felt like a bitter irony because he was arriving late to his partner's side. Edward's knuckles were white as he gripped the edge of the table. "Who told you this?" he gritted out, his voice barely a whisper. "No one told me," the man replied, his gaze soft with a compassion Edward didn't feel he deserved. "I was there with you, Edward, and I have carried this burden with you. You have confused your punishment with your purpose. But tonight, I am here to set you free." Edward's pen slipped from his numb fingers, clattering onto the floor. For 20 years, he had worn his badge like a suit of armor, hiding the broken man inside. Tonight, the armor was cracking. The mask was falling away. Who are you?" he breathed. The stranger's eyes held his steady and full of a love that felt ancient and absolute. "I am not here to judge you, Edward," he said. "I am here to love you." Just then, a sharp knock rattled the door. Sergeant Morales poked his head in. "Martinez, your shift ended an hour ago. Everything good in here?" Edward blinked, the spell momentarily broken. He turned back to the chair across from him. It was empty. The cuffs lay on the table, open. The stranger was gone. In his place was a single, folded piece of paper. With trembling hands, Edward picked it up. He unfolded it. The handwriting was simple, elegant. It read, "Peace be with you. Guilt is a prison you built. Today, I gave you the key. Robert is with me." Edward pressed the note to his chest, and a dam he had built 3 years ago finally broke. Tears he had refused to shed, tears of grief and guilt and a lifetime of pain, finally came, washing over him in silent, heaving sobs. That night, for the first time in years, he didn't go home and retreat into silence. He walked in the door and pulled his wife, Carmen, into his arms. She stiffened at first, so accustomed to the cold distance he kept between them, but then, feeling the tremor in his body, the wetness of his tears, on her shoulder, she melted into his embrace. "I love you," he whispered, the words feeling both foreign and profoundly right. Their son, Michael, watched from the staircase, his young face a mask of disbelief as his father turned and reached for him, pulling him into the hug. "I've been gone for too long," Edward said, his voice thick with emotion. "No more." The next day, they went to the cemetery. Edward knelt at Robert's grave, pressing his hand against the cool, unforgiving stone. "Brother," he whispered, the wind carrying his words away, "I'm going to honor you, not by punishing myself, but by living." And he did. The city began to see a different officer. Martinez, the hard edge was gone, replaced by a quiet strength. Calls that once might have ended with force, now ended with mercy. He spent hours talking a missing teen off a ledge, not with threats, but with patience and understanding. He saw the fear in a young gang recruit's eyes and didn't see a criminal. He saw a kid who needed hope, telling him he was valuable. A homeless veteran, braced for a citation, walked away with a warm meal and a list of shelters instead. Stories began to circulate, quiet whispers at first, then more confident tales. An elderly woman swore that a man who looked just like the pictures of Jesus in her Bible had visited her, saying Officer Martinez had sent him to check in. Children in a rough neighborhood spoke of the cop who prayed with a family after a fire. The man who had once been a symbol of unyielding law was becoming a vessel of grace. 2 years later, Edward stood in a parish hall, packed to the rafters. Carmen and Michael sat in the front row, their faces shining with pride. In one hand, he held his badge. In the other, the folded note, now worn and soft from being carried every day. "I was a broken man," he confessed to the crowd of neighbors, colleagues, and strangers. "I wore this uniform to hide an empty soul. But one night, on a stormy freeway, I arrested a man who, in turn, set me free. That night, I learned that guilt doesn't have to be the end of the story. Grace is." As he finished, the room erupted. The applause was like thunder, a wave of support and love that washed over him. Later, when the hall was empty and quiet, Edward lingered alone. The colors from the stained glass windows painted patterns across his uniform. He bowed his head. "Thank you," he whispered into the silence. "Thank you for not giving up on me." And in the stillness of his own heart, he heard a voice, a gentle echo of the one he'd heard in the storm. "Well done. The work has only just begun." He stepped out into the warm Texas night. The city was still. The city with its crime, its pain, its shadows. But he walked through it differently now. He carried no chains. The man who once arrested a stranger in the rain now walked completely free, redeemed, forgiven, and forever changed by an encounter that redefined the very meaning of justice and mercy. Thank you so much for watching this story unfold. If it moved you, Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more content that explores the moments that change us. We'll see you next time.